As the clock ticked past midnight, the usual array of customers shuffled in. Night owls, truckers, insomniacs, all seeking a bite to eat or a hot cup of coffee to ward off the darkness. But it was one customer in particular who sent a shiver down my spine. She walked into the diner with a hurried, almost panicked demeanor. Her name was Sarah, as I would later come to know, and she seemed genuinely distressed. Her eyes darted around the room as if searching for something, or someone. I approached her booth with my notepad and a forced smile. "Evening, ma'am. What can I get you tonight?" She barely looked at me, her gaze still scanning the diner. "Just a cup of coffee, please. And can you make it quick?" I nodded and hurried off to fetch her order. But as I returned with the steaming cup of coffee, something caught my eye in the parking lot. A dark silhouette lurking behind a car, watching Sarah intently. My heart skipped a beat as I realized that this wasn't a mere coincidence. The figure in the shadows was stalking her. Panic welled up inside me as I tried to decide what to do. Should I call the police? Alert the other customers? Before I could make a move, Sarah's eyes met mine, and I saw the fear in them. She knew she was being followed too. With trembling hands, I set the coffee down in front of her. "Is something wrong?" I asked quietly, trying not to draw attention. She leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. "There's a man out there. He's been following me since I left my car." I glanced out the window again, but the stalker had disappeared into the night. "I'll keep an eye on things," I assured her. "If you need anything, just let me know." Sarah thanked me and huddled over her coffee, clearly on edge. I kept a watchful eye on the diner's entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. Minutes turned into hours, and there was no sign of the stalker. Just when I began to hope that he had given up, he reappeared, slipping through the entrance like a wraith. He wore a dark hood that obscured his face, and his movements were eerily silent. My blood ran cold as he approached Sarah's booth. She looked up, her face contorted with fear. "You!" she exclaimed. The stalker said nothing, but his presence spoke volumes. I rushed toward them, ready to intervene. But before I could reach them, Sarah's coffee cup shattered on the floor. She had thrown it at the stalker in a desperate bid to defend herself. Chaos erupted in the diner as other customers leaped to their feet, startled by the commotion. The stalker retreated, fleeing out the door as fast as he had arrived, disappearing into the night once more. I helped Sarah to her feet, my heart still racing. "Are you okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned. She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for being there. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't noticed." The police were called, and Sarah gave them a description of the stalker. As they took her statement, I couldn't help but wonder about the sinister figure who had invaded our diner that night. What had he wanted from Sarah, and why had he chosen our seemingly ordinary diner as the setting for his unsettling pursuit? It had been a long week, and my friends Lucy, Sean, and I decided to unwind with a night out at a cozy little restaurant called Ella's Eats. The place had a reputation for its delicious food, but we were in for more than just a meal that night. As we entered, the warm aroma of freshly baked bread and simmering sauces embraced us like an old friend. The ambiance was charming, with soft jazz music playing in the background, casting a soothing spell over the diners. We settled into a booth near the window, eager to relax and catch up. Our waitress, an oddly solemn woman named Agnes, approached our table with a strained smile. Her disheveled hair and wrinkled uniform raised an eyebrow or two among us, but we brushed it off, thinking she might have had a rough day. "Evening, folks. My name's Agnes, and I'll be taking care of you tonight," she muttered, her voice quivering. "Hi, Agnes," Lucy chirped, trying to lighten the mood. "We'll have the garlic bread for starters, please." Agnes scribbled our order down on her pad and shuffled away, disappearing through the swinging doors that led to the kitchen. I couldn't help but exchange puzzled glances with Sean and Lucy. "That's one gloomy waitress," Sean remarked, sipping his water. Yeah, and did you see the way she looked? Like she'd just seen a ghost, I added. As we chatted, our appetizers arrived promptly, but Agnes remained absent. Lucy, always the empathetic one, decided to go check on her. Maybe she's having a bad day, guys. I'll be right back. Lucy disappeared into the depths of the restaurant, leaving Sean and me alone at the table. We continued our conversation, but as the minutes stretched into an uneasy silence, I began to grow concerned. Where's Lucy? It's been ages, Sean muttered, checking his watch. Just as we were about to get up and look for her, Lucy returned, her face pale as a sheet. She slid into the booth, her voice barely above a whisper. Guys, you won't believe what I saw back there. The kitchen, it's a mess. And Agnes, she was talking to herself, muttering something about the hungry one. Sean and I exchanged nervous glances. Something was terribly wrong. Should we leave? I asked, my appetite long gone. Before we could decide, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen. The swinging doors flew open, and Agnes stumbled out, her eyes wild with fear. It's here! It's here! She shrieked, before collapsing in front of our table. We watched in horror as a dark, shadowy figure emerged from the kitchen, its form shifting and undulating. It slithered closer, emitting an eerie, guttural growl that sent shivers down our spines. Without thinking, we bolted for the exit, leaving behind our half-eaten garlic bread and the wailing Agnes. As we burst out into the cool night air, we glanced back at the restaurant, its windows now aglow with an eerie green light. What the hell was that? Lucy panted, her eyes wide with terror. I don't know, but I don't think I want to find out, Sean replied, his voice trembling. We never returned to Ella's Eats, and we never spoke of that night again. But in our hearts, the memory of the sketchy waitress and the unspeakable horror lurking in the back room would forever haunt us, a chilling reminder that some restaurants serve more than just food. I had a routine after my late-night shifts, a stop at the 24-hour diner on my way home. The place was called Charlie's Diner, a small, run-down joint that felt strangely comforting in the dead of night. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the worn-out booths. It wasn't fancy, but it served greasy comfort food that hit the spot after a grueling shift. One chilly autumn night, as I pushed open the creaky door to Charlie's, I noticed something odd. The usually bustling diner was nearly empty, save for a lone waitress named Emily. She was a young woman with tired eyes and a weary smile. Her apron was stained with what looked like dried ketchup, and she seemed on edge. Hey there, hon, Emily greeted me as I slid into a booth. Slow night? I asked, noticing the vacant stools at the counter. She nodded, pouring me a cup of coffee without a word. Emily was usually chatty, but that night, she seemed different, distant. As I sipped my coffee, I couldn't help but overhear a conversation at the counter. A customer was complaining about the diner's famous apple pie being sold out. But that's what I came here for, the customer exclaimed. Emily's eyes darted around nervously before disappearing into the kitchen. A few minutes later, she returned with a fresh slice of pie, placing it in front of the customer. I couldn't help but wonder how she had produced that pie so quickly, but I pushed the thought aside and focused on my meal. After finishing my burger and fries, I decided to order a slice of that infamous apple pie. Emily brought it to me with a forced smile, but there was something off about the slice. It looked perfectly normal, but the aroma was peculiar, like a mixture of cinnamon and something I couldn't quite place. As I took my first bite, I was hit with an overwhelming feeling of drowsiness. My eyelids grew heavy, and I struggled to stay awake. Panicking, I tried to call out to Emily, but my voice came out as a weak murmur. Just as I thought I'd pass out, Emily rushed to my side, her eyes filled with worry. Are you okay? I managed to mumble. Pie. Something in the pie. She grabbed the plate and studied the slice closely. I don't know what you're talking about. Before I could protest further, the door to the diner swung open, and a group of patrons entered. Emily's attention shifted, and she hastily ushered them to their seats, leaving me to deal with my strange, pie-induced lethargy. But something was amiss. The new customers had an odd, vacant look in their eyes, and as they dug into their food, their movements seemed sluggish, robotic. My heart raced as I realized the horrifying truth. There was something in that pie. Something that affected those who consumed it. I had to escape, but my limbs felt like lead. Summoning all the strength I could muster, I managed to stagger out of the booth and stumble toward the exit. Emily glanced at me, her expression unreadable, but she made no move to stop me. I burst out into the cold night air, gasping for breath. Behind me, I could hear the eerie silence of the diner, broken only by the slow, deliberate movements of the customers. As I walked away from Charlie's diner, my mind raced with questions. What was in that pie? What had happened to Emily? And who were those strange, lifeless customers? One thing was certain. I would never set foot in that diner again. The memory of that night would forever haunt me, a chilling reminder that even the most ordinary places can hide the darkest secrets.